Hi, everybody. We are in this location that I didn't know personally. And so it's we are in the middle of a sort of corridor of pavilions. And we have some people listening, and also we would like we are going to register. I hope it is recording, yes. And this will go on YouTube and whatsoever. Welcome. And I'm very pleased to moderate and to introduce this panel that WWF Italy proposed to the Ministry of Environment on a very hot issue. Oh, welcome. The minister is already here. And this panel is talking about renewables and nature, but we would like to go out of the usual common phrases that you listen to when they talk about renewables and nature. Sometimes you listen to somebody saying renewables are a problem for nature or for landscape or for communities. That's not true, and we think that nature and renewables can go together very well if we do we avoid the mistakes that we did in the past. In particular, we think, sorry, Viviane, can you give me a headphone because all the noises are very disturbing, sorry. And in particular, we think that we need first of all, we need renewables for. So there is. Sorry, I must say that there is the interpreter, so I can speak Italian and you can. Ok. Scusate, questo mi rende le cose più semplici perché tutto il rumore mi dava veramente molto fastidio e in più parlare inglese risultava difficile. Ok, allora, rinnovabili e natura. Noi abbiamo non bisogno. Le rinnovabili sono la strada obbligata. Abbiamo visto che siamo arrivati in un punto molto pericoloso del cambiamento climatico. Io penso che alcune delle persone nelle capitali non si rendano assolutamente conto di quanto in realtà il momento sia pericoloso. Quello che stiamo vedendo come effetti del cambiamento climatico potrebbe essere niente rispetto ad altri possibili impatti. Noi siamo in una situazione in cui c'è un rubinetto aperto e sono i combustibili fossili. Noi siamo in una casa che si sta allagando e qui chiunque ci chiede dobbiamo fare altro, dobbiamo asciugare per terra, ma se non chiudiamo il rubinetto, il problema della casa che si allaga non lo risolveremo. Quindi noi dobbiamo chiudere il rubinetto. Forse questo può diventare lo slogan per il prossimo futuro. Per chiudere il rubinetto abbiamo un'alternativa disponibile oggi, mentre altre sono delle promesse, ed è una fonte, quella delle rinnovabili, che già copre grandi parti del nostro fabbisogno energetico in moltissimi paesi. Quindi le rinnovabili sono la strada obbligata. Però è anche vero che l'altra grande minaccia che noi abbiamo, oltre al cambiamento climatico, è la perdita di natura, la perdita di biodiversità. È una minaccia che noi non percepiamo come una minaccia al nostro modo di vivere, alla nostra possibilità di vivere, ma in realtà è così, è nello stesso modo esattamente del cambiamento climatico. Le due cose si parlano purtroppo. Voglio dire, il cambiamento climatico è la prima causa di perdita di natura. Quindi le due cose si parlano e devono essere affrontate in modo interconnesso. Però, secondo noi, secondo il WWF, le due questioni possono davvero essere affrontate positivamente in modo interconnesso. Le fonti rinnovabili hanno un impatto minimo sulla natura, io le vedo certe volte con attonita alcuni esponenti anche industriali parlare dei guasti delle rinnovabili al paesaggio e nello stesso tempo le loro attività sono veramente hanno distrutto paesaggio e ambiente per tantissimi anni. Quindi, a mio modo di vedere, noi dobbiamo cercare di ritornare al nocciolo del problema. Le fonti rinnovabili hanno un impatto minimo, neglectable, sulla sicuramente DIN che lo dimostrano, di Cooper del WWF internazionale, però nello stesso tempo le fonti rinnovabili devono essere fatte bene, non dobbiamo ripetere errori del passato. Ma oggi siamo in un passo in avanti. Noi oggi possiamo considerare, possiamo cercare di fare in modo che le fonti rinnovabili e la conservazione della biodiversità si parlino, addirittura agiscano di concerto. La ricerca deve andare in questo senso e può andare in questo senso. Per gli ospiti stranieri voglio solamente premettere che in Italia abbiamo una situazione molto complessa. Abbiamo qui il ministro che ci farà un saluto lui conosce EAS e ovviamente è dentro un dibattito molto forte, per esempio sulla questione delle aree idonee. Voi sapete che a livello europeo sono state fatte le aree di accelerazione, sono state costituite le aree di accelerazione, l'applicazione delle regioni della normativa attuale sulle aree idonee è diventata un provvedimento per impedire le rinnovabili in quasi tutto il territorio, è diventata una specie di legge per le aree non idonee. La Regione Sardegna ha consentito per le aree idonee una proporzione molto limitata del proprio territorio, con delle eccezioni che nella nuova versione al Consiglio regionale sono state tolte, anche quelle, per cui praticamente bisogna vedere su quelle che loro ritengono aree idonee se sono adatte alle rinnovabili oltretutto, e il 99% del territorio è diventato proibito per le rinnovabili. Così non si può andare avanti. Tra l'altro quello era il provvedimento che c'era stato richiesto dall'Unione Europea per i soldi del PNRR. Quindi voi capite che il PNRR e il Next Generation EU sono i soldi dopo il Covid che sono stati stanziati per il Green Deal, insomma per il nuovo impianto economico verde, dell'economia verde. Quindi questa situazione ovviamente fa sì che non solo non si pensi al futuro, alla ricerca di vantaggi sia per la natura che per le comunità, non ce le dimentichiamo, ma addirittura siamo in una situazione di divieto per le rinnovabili, da regioni che sono state massacrate dai combustibili fossili. Vi ricordo che la regione Sardegna è la regione con il più alto tasso di anidride carbonica in Italia, perché ha 2 centrali a carbone che rimarranno anche quando chiuderanno quelle nella penisola. Ecco, ho voluto mettere un po' di carne al fuoco per gli ospiti, quindi pregherei il ministro di darci il saluto perché sappiamo che ha degli impegni e poi passeremo agli altri ospiti. Io non tornerò qui, però prego, per ragioni tecniche, tutti gli ospiti che parlano anche del panel di venire qua, così potranno essere inquadrati dalla telecamera. Grazie.
Ti ringrazio. No, davvero grazie, buongiorno a tutti. Io ringrazio bravo, no? Ringrazio dell'iniziativa del side event sul tema energetico. Allora, lo stato dell'arte, io fra 5 minuti c'è una plenaria, di conseguenza abbandonerò immediatamente per andare in plenaria. Abbiamo ricevuto questa mattina la somma delle idee, possiamo dire così, perché la somma delle idee un assemblaggio che senza sintesi, e quindi non è un documento, non è la base di un documento finale. Quindi è chiaro che nella giornata di oggi speriamo di arrivare per questa sera a delle ipotesi di mediazione. Ci sono ancora posizioni molto distanti e quindi anche in questo momento non si tratta di dire alla domanda siamo ottimisti o siamo pessimisti, siamo realistici, cerchiamo di trovare quello che è il percorso opportuno per raggiungere quelli che sono gli obiettivi globali. L'obiettivo globale della decarbonizzazione è un obiettivo che non ha i confini di Stato e di conseguenza è un'azione che tutti dobbiamo portare avanti. Tema che noi abbiamo posto anche durante la nostra presidenza di G7. Devo dire che nella bozza vista questa mattina c'è la proposta di arrivare a 1500 gigawatt di stoccaggi che è l'esatto importo che avevamo previsto nel G7 Energia Italiano, quindi nella carta di Venaria. Questo lo considero un dato positivo perché chiaramente gli stoccaggi sono l'elemento fondamentale per poter andare avanti con l'azione delle rinnovabili. Noi abbiamo il nostro piano nazionale che prevede chiaramente l'obiettivo al 2030 di almeno sul fronte dell'energia elettrica, se non c'è un ragionamento di energia complessiva, sappiamo bene, l'energia complessiva a livello paese può essere stimata sui 1800-2000 terawatt, ma compreso quella motrice, tutte le energie. Andando sul fronte dell'elettrico, che è quello anche più facilmente misurabile, noi attualmente siamo ancora in una condizione di 2/3 provenienti dal fossile e 1/3 provenienti dalle rinnovabili, tenendo presente che abbiamo nel contempo dovuto cambiare lo scenario, ribaltare lo scenario delle forniture anche di fossile, di gas in particolare. Siamo determinati ad andare avanti su quello che è l'obiettivo dell'abbandono del carbone, nel 2025. Qualcuno mi chiede la data, stiamo definendo la data anche rispetto alle condizioni aziendali, all'occupazione, a tutta una serie di elementi che chiaramente investono le centrali a carbone nella parte continentale. Purtroppo, come avete avuto modo di sentire, ciò non può avvenire per la Sardegna, dove però bisogna mantenere il 28 come data ultima per chiudere. La Sardegna purtroppo è una realtà che non ha un piano energetico al momento. Nei 6 mesi della nuova amministrazione non c'è ancora stata una proposta. Giustamente bisognava dare i tempi alla nuova amministrazione perché facesse le valutazioni sul piano energetico, ma le forme di applicazione del 199 e a sua volta del decreto del sottoscritto per l'individuazione delle aree idonee non sono certo di buon auspicio. Cioè, purtroppo abbiamo una situazione a livello nazionale che porta a delle valutazioni convintamente, idealmente convinte sulle rinnovabili, ma non a casa mia. Sostanzialmente questo, non nel mio giardino. E questo è uno scoglio che noi dobbiamo in qualche modo superare con equilibrio, perché noi dobbiamo tutelare un territorio nazionale che è molto particolare. Non abbiamo le grandi distese di deserto per poter fare gli enormi impianti, possiamo fare qualche sforzo, ma che può andare, che vedremo solo tra i prossimi anni rispetto all'eolico offshore, il grande eolico offshore, ma che è molto più avanti, e nel contempo agire per raggiungere quello che è l'obiettivo PNEC, che sono arrivare ai 131 gigawatt nel 2030 e quindi aggiungere i famosi 75-80 gigawatt. La sostanza è questa. Dobbiamo essere determinati a raggiungerle, perché quello diventa il punto discriminante. Non dobbiamo nemmeno illuderci, e lo dico con molta franchezza, sul fatto che nei primi 6 mesi dell'anno la produzione di energia elettrica nel paese abbia superato il 50% con le rinnovabili. Questo è vero che sono la parte politica, dovrei darlo come elemento di vanto e come elemento di successo, ma io la metto proprio solamente sotto l'aspetto che è andata bene, nel senso che abbiamo avuto un aumento elevato dell'idroelettrico dovuto al fatto che purtroppo, e dico purtroppo, il riscaldamento del Mediterraneo, il contrasto con l'aria fredda determina una situazione meteorologica che porta a siccità e alluvioni molto pesanti. Cioè, la questione di Valenza non è o dell'Emilia Romagna non è una sporadicità, è la conseguenza di un cambiamento climatico che deve essere lo stimolo ad accelerare nella decarbonizzazione. È vero che il tema è mondiale, è vero che noi possiamo in Italia può essere considerato solo lo 0,7% a livello mondiale, non è una scusa perché lo 0,7% a livello mondiale. Anzi, per il nostro paese deve essere stimolo per fare meglio, perché se lo sviluppo del nostro paese, dell'Italia, il poter essere l'Italia nel G7, l'aver avuto a suo tempo il miracolo italiano 70 anni fa, è stato fatto grazie a fare al Made in Italy i prodotti migliori, anche il raggiungere la decarbonizzazione significa un brand per avere i prodotti migliori e quindi per continuare quello che è un percorso che ci permette oggi di essere tra quel miliardo di persone che sono considerate ricche rispetto agli 8 miliardi di persone sulla Terra. Io chiedo scusa, vi ringrazio perché vado alla plenaria che sta per cominciare. Grazie.
Grazie Ministro, grazie Ministro. Mi permetto di dirle che, avendo come WWF coordinato la campagna delle ONG sulla chiusura delle centrali a carbone, la invitiamo a fare insieme una festa per la chiusura delle centrali a carbone il prossimo anno. Grazie. Guardi, non solo a lei, grazie. Allora, grazie mille, e qui faccio la brava presentatrice, mi metto anche in piedi perché tanto non c'è bisogno che mi inquadrano.
Non sentiamo più, vero? Neanche voi?
No, è saltato il collegamento.
Io ho già scritto che non li sentiamo più.
La Camera di darci la sua visione rispetto allo sviluppo delle rinnovabili. Francesco, ti lascio libero di dire ciò che vuoi e soprattutto però darci qualche notizia positiva sulla possibilità di raggiungere l'obiettivo di Dubai, triplicare le energie rinnovabili entro il 2030. Grazie.
Grazie, grazie Maria Grazia, grazie a tutti. Un saluto a chi è qui a Baku, ma anche un saluto agli amici e ai colleghi che sono collegati con noi via video. Beh, tutti quanti siamo qui dopo Dubai, dove è stato, diciamo così, raggiunto questo importante accordo sulla triplicare la capacità installata di rinnovabili, raddoppiare l'efficienza energetica alla 2030. Questo significa avere alla 2030 11,2 terawatt di capacità rinnovabile installata, ed esattamente il numero che traduce in terawatt la riduzione delle emissioni di CO2 richiesta dall'IPCC per stare in un percorso che sia coerente al raggiungimento degli obiettivi di Parigi. E quindi okay. I will make my try, okay?
Yeah, no, you know that the lesson.
So we were discussing about what the 11.2 terawatt means. The 11.2 terawatts is just the translation in terawatts of the targets of the reduction of 43% of CO2 emission by 2030. It has been indicated by the International Panel on Climate Change to keep in line with the objective of the Paris Agreement. So keep the increase of the temperature well below the 2 degrees at the end of the century, and making the best for containing the rising temperature by 1.5. So that 11 terawatts, taking into account the trend of demand, is the quantity of clean energy that we need to have in the system. So moving from the little more than 20% of today to the 65% in 2030. So where we are with this, and you know, last year was a new record of renewable installed capacity. As you may have already read in our report on the tracking on the outcome of the COP28. You know, the agency has been behind the triple with its own analysis. The triple came from the analysis of ARENA, and so has been in some way consequential that the COP presidency asked us to monitor the progress. So we launched just in occasion of the pre-COP here in Baku, our tracking monitoring report, and we will publish this report every year until 2030. In the report, we make clear that we had a new record of installed capacity in 2023, 473 gigawatts. That is almost 30% more than the previous year. And just to give you an idea of the scale and the speed of what mean in these records of renewables is that we have installed in this year the 20-30% more that we have installed in 70 years of nuclear around the world. So I just always repeat this to make clear that when we talk about raising the speed and the scale of the transformation, this is what the renewables can provide to us when compared with other technologies. So what does it mean having installed 473 gigawatts? Is that the direction of travel is clear. All the data show that we are moving towards a new energy system. It will be largely dominated by renewables, complemented by hydrogen, mainly the green hydrogen, and the sustainable use of biomass. And as we say already a few years ago, this is a process is unstoppable. I think we have already reached the tipping point, so no one can reverse this trend. So what is at stake today is not where we are going, but the speed and the scale of this journey. That's the reason I'm trying to make the comparison between two different technologies to focus on the fact that we need a speed and the scale that is compatible with the challenge in front of us. 473 gigawatts means less than half of what we needed. Because if you are today around 4 terawatts, could be 11.2 terawatt 2030, means installing more than 1 terawatt per year. And as far as we can see, in 2024, we will have a new record of renewable installed capacity, but we don't think that we'll do more than 550 gigawatts of renewable installed capacity. This means that the next year will be more difficult to have a path that is consistent with the 11.2 terawatts. And this brought us to say that this COP and the next COP will be the last two where the presidency can come as an overarching goal to keep it at 1.5 alive. So the data of the next 2 years will say if we have to move to another goal instead of the 1.5. And I agree sometimes with Maria Grazia say that seems that the evidence of this is not well perceived at political level. So the question that we ask ourselves as Arena is the following. Now it's crystal clear that renewables is the most competitive way to produce power. Last year, 87% of new installed capacity on power was renewables. The remaining 13% was all else. In the 80% of the cases, 81%, renewable has been more competitive than any other option from fossil fuel. So it's also, renewables also good for social aspects, because for any units of investment in renewables, we have 3 times more jobs be created than fossil fuels one. It's now also evident after the Ukraine crisis that distributive system based on renewables is much more resilient to shock than a centralized energy system. So at the end, renewables is what we need in terms of energy security. So if all this is true, and it is true, why we don't go faster? We are already going fast, but why we don't go faster? In our opinion, in our assessment, this perhaps the leftist part of Arena in some way, that we look at the structural cause of why things are not happening. In our point of view, there are 3 main barriers structural barrier to a more rapid development of renewables. The first one is the infrastructure. What we mean? We mean that we need grids that are interconnected, that are flexible, that are balanced, so allow for more renewables going to the grids. It's a false assessment say that renewables cannot provide for the base loads. If we have the right infrastructure, renewables can provide also the base load. I've just visited China a couple of weeks ago, when there are large provinces that are simply 100% renewables, and where they also are located all the computing capacity of China, so that our renewables can also provide all the energy we need, the power we need for the artificial intelligence and other. So we also need port, harbor, where we can trade. We can trade hydrogen, ammonia. We need port that have area where we can assemble the pieces of offshore plants and other. The other aspect are the policy aspects, the legal environment. Okay, the most evidence is that we are still subsidizing fossil fuels. But what is less known is that all the trade tariffs are not working for renewables. So it's so in context what we say at political level with the trade tariff that we have. We also talk about hydrogen, but we have no policy for hydrogen. As you remember, a decade ago, renewables were 400 times more expensive than today. And without the policies that some government put in place, we are not where we are now, where renewables are the cheapest way to produce electricity. This should happen also for hydrogen. So we need policies that encourage the use of hydrogen. We need a market that is designed not on the marginal cost, fixing prices, but we need long-term contract market design work. Market design. We need auction working on the market. So we have to change how the market works and making it more suitable for renewables. The other aspect is that if a distributed system is much more resilient, the fact is that it is less easy to manage than a centralized one. So we need institutions that are able to manage a system like this. Third, again, is on the skills and professionals. We don't have the professionals, and still we have to reskill all the workers that are moving from one area to another. My last thought is coming back on the infrastructure and say, okay, we may understand that the infrastructure is important, but who has to provide for that? We as Arena is already 3 years that we are insisting that in the reform of the multilateral financial institutions, it's not just a question to have more loans or more grants. The question is for what? In our point of view, the multilateral financial institutions should focus, especially in Africa and Southeast Asia, to have plan and provide funding for strengthening the infrastructure. This will be the only way to have more renewables go in this part of the world where the demand of energy will grow faster in the next years. And if we don't intercept that demand with clean energy, the Paris Agreement will be in a bin very easily. So these are the main messages that I wish to share with you. I hope that I have not been so long. We hope that from this COP, we will have this quantified goal on finance to be agreed. Please don't be critical if it would be not so high. The most important thing is that it will be there, it will be agreed. This is the most important thing. Don't look at the amount. There is in the document today, I think, 1,300,000,000,000. It will never happen. We will have something significant less, but it's not important. It's important that we have a design. Also, it's important to give, guidance to the states, to the country to come with the NDCs. The one that the minister has mentioned concerning storage is an important one. It's based on the golden rule of ARENA, 1 to 10, 1 to 5 storage renewable installed capacity. So we hope that in language of gigawatts or in language of golden rules, this will be there for guiding the country in drafting the NDC. And the hope other targets may be there in the text for facilitating this work. Naturally, ARENA is committed to support 100 countries in the NDCs, and we will see what's happening. I try always to keep from all this what is positive, look at what is positive and not what is negative. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now it's the other keynote speaker, that is Dean Cooper. Dean is our head of energy at WWF International, and he's also the promoter of the alliance Clean Action, that is an alliance that would like to put together climate and nature on the same page. Please, Dean.
Thanks very much, Maria Grazia, and thanks also for this invitation to the Italian pavilion. I have a big advantage here since I'm English, so I do express my gratitude for that. Before I start, I'd just like to know a little bit about yourselves. So could you tell me quickly, your organization, are you involved or do you focus on energy? Which organizations focus on energy? Okay, so I've got approximately a quarter of the audience saying on energy. Okay, now how many people would say they look at nature, biodiversity? Okay, so approximately a quarter as well. And last question, how many people do energy and nature? Okay, well, there are a few. That's a little bit undecided. That's the problem. So I can say to you that I'm the global lead for energy at WWF. And in fact, I've spent 30 plus years, I won't tell you how many, in energy and talking to other energy people and talking to Irina and coming to conferences, speaking about energy. And it was only after I joined WWF about three and a half years ago that I realized I've just spent the last 30 years talking to other energy people. And I've been going in my energy box, talking to other people who already know about energy. The difficulty is making the connection to the outside, to what other issues are relevant. And let's face it, we're not the only ones when we talk about energy and thinking about nature and biodiversity. Think about the COP. It's taken COP 26 years to realize that energy is actually the important contributor to climate. So the first time we got a mention in the agreement was at Glasgow at COP 26. It may well take us another while before we start getting biodiversity acknowledged as a critical factor. But being more serious about this, nature is actually not just about saving nice plants and animals. That's what I always thought about the panda people. Yeah, it's a nice panda and we want to save these animals. They're nice and friendly and I can visit. It's not about that. It's about the economic reality. There was a report issued recently from KPMG consultancy that said 55% of global GDP is dependent in some way on nature. That's $58 trillion that are dependent upon the natural environment and biodiversity. So we have to start thinking not just about energy, not just about the climate, but about climate and energy and nature. What is the impact on there? We also have to think about the just transition. And it's not just something that you put into the reference documents and we have a partnership and we have negotiations. It's actually part of the process. And as we've been told from Irina, it's actually important to understand how we make that transition. Renewable energy is the future. That's where we're looking. We're committed to 100% renewables. We want to do it faster, greener, and fairer. And the fairer is a big part of that issue, is that the people who are currently involved in the fossil fuel industry can't be told we're going to phase out fossil fuels and with no fossil fuels tomorrow unless they've got an option. Now, we need to provide this as an opportunity for those people, not for them to come out and stop the process because their livelihoods depend upon fossil fuels. And it's not just the people that are mining the coal and the oil and the gas, it's the people in the supply chains, the whole process. So a lot of people, and as we've been told, we need to be thinking about capacity, skills improvement. It's one of the big barriers to renewable energy at the moment, is having sufficient capacity to take it forwards. Okay, so that's the principles, that's fine. We must consider climate, energy, and nature. It's not just about being friendly, it's about the social and economic fabric of society at the moment. Now, this can get very doom and gloom very quickly, and you can become very depressed when I tell you that my teenage sons, when I speak to them at the dinner table, and I say, why are you not doing your homework properly today? And they say to me in teenage language in the UK, but Dad, why should I bother with my homework? Our planet's cooked. And apparently that's the terminology for finished. Now, well, I'm not going to be here in 20 years, so why should I bother with looking at this now? It's actually quite depressing. The agenda that we're on is not in a paper, it's not in a concept, it's not something we've got to read the research and say, in the future, things might be a problem. I don't have to look at research papers. I can push the button on the television. I can see the floods and the droughts and the temperatures, the records, the deaths that are happening. We've heard about Italy. We know about the Spanish situation. We know everywhere is happening. This is mainstream news. So my sons are saying to me, Dad, you're involved in this. Why are you not doing something about it? I can't answer that question. And I wish we could understand where we're going on this. Okay, so what do we do in practice? We all have vested interests. We all have an issue about what does this mean to us? Our organization, you're going to leave this meeting here and you're going to write the report from what you've done at COP here. Why can I justify what's happening here? The investors are going to say, we can't invest in this because the policy is not right. The policy makers are going to say, oh, but it's too complicated and we haven't actually got enough resources to be able to impact this properly. Everybody's blaming everybody else for the lack of progress. The fact is, the only way we're going to get an improvement, the improvement that we need, is if we work together. We may all have individual interests. There's only one planet, there's only one climate, and we share that. So we need to come together to find a solution fast enough, as we've been said, and clean enough to make the future an inhabitable place. But it's not just about working together, it's also taking that individual responsibility. We can't blame everybody else. We can't walk away from here and saying, well, there's no need for me to do anything, or my organization. People together. So bring the private sector, industry, policymakers, financiers, the researchers, the implementers, bring together. We have a coalition linking energy and nature for action, not for talking. As we say in English, we don't want talking, we want walking, we want movement, we want action. So this coalition is called Clean Action, Coalition Linking Energy and Nature for Action. One of the specific things we've agreed to do, particularly for this year, is to look at siting and permitting. How do we roll out renewable energy? We can do it well and we can do it not so well. We want to think about how do we avoid having renewable energy in conservation areas, in protected areas. We don't want to cause that damage. How can we extend the lives of existing systems. How can we make them operate more efficiently? So we don't have to have additional, we want additional capacity, not additional infrastructure unnecessarily on the environment. How can we use the existing tools, the planning, all of the organizations that are currently working on this? Let's bring them together and understand how we can do this most quickly, most effectively, because customer. That's the first starting point. We don't come from COP and say, this is how we're going to do it. We go to the people who are going to be affected and say, what is your situation? How can we do this? Is it going to improve your situation? It's not going to damage your situation. What about the compensation? What about the benefits you're going to achieve as a result of that? And then my final point is that we've got to measure. We've got to look at how we progress this, because we don't have very long. We've got to have accountability. People have got to have targets, and they've got to meet those targets, not make more excuses to prolong the process. So do it together, but take individual responsibility. Energy, climate, and nature all together will make a better future if we can address it properly. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dean. Very inspiring. And now we have the panel. First of all, I must say sorry. I'm very sorry because of the situation we are here. You from far away, can you even imagine in which situation we are? Just think to be in the middle of the stadium. And not playing the football, but talking, and maybe you will understand. But we have only half an hour, and so although individually I asked you the word, we have no time to talk about the word. That's the reality. So please be very focused. And first of all, I would like to ask something about the reality, the day-by-day reality of the relationship between nature and the renewables. I invited Paola Brambilla, that is coordinating the task force that is in our Ministry of Environment, is deciding about the environmental evaluation about the renewables. So you can understand which focal role she has got. And I think that she can talk about the experience. Please keep in 5 minutes, because at 1 o'clock they will kick us out of the pavilion.
Thank you very much, Maria Grazia, for the inspiring conversation. Well, I have to put on the table my experience inside the Environmental Impact Assessment Commission, which is a commission that, on behalf of the Ministry of the Environment, examine and make rich the most important project regarding the ecological and the energy transition. And mainly we deal both with strategic plans, for example, the plans which provide the development of the grid, of the national grid, which are so important, to put in action really our new energetic renewable production. Both projects regarding hydropower plants, wind farm plants, offshore wind farms, and also the solar plants, which are so important because there is a huge number of these projects in Italy. And I have to say that the role of our Commission is really, I think, a role which has inside the task to bring nature inside the evaluation of projects. I mean, every project has an impact on nature, on soil, on water, also on atmosphere, on people who live besides the plants. But we have the fundamental role to make a project, to make a plant, the extraordinary occasion to bring in action the new vision of the restoration nature law. I mean, every plant has the extraordinary power to be the moment where we can ask to the people, to the extraordinary teams who makes this project to care for mitigation and compensation. I just want to make an example. At the beginning of our work, it is 5 years ago, we were dealing with ordinary wind farm plants, and we decided to ask them to paint black the turbines in order to prevent the collision with birds. And this has a fantastic impact because it diminishes of 2/3 the possibility of a collision with birds. And we also asked to the developer of the plants to bring special devices on the turbines to recognize fires in order to prevent, the other problems connected to climate change, which are wildfires, which burns woods and forest. And this is just an example. Another example, the big offshore wind farms are really the occasion to put in action the other effective area-based conservation measures, because where a wind farm, floating wind farm, is realized in open sea, it gives the possibility to fish and other biomes of the sea to grow and to give enough richness and population to our poor seas. So I think that really renewable energy, if brought in action inside an environmental impact assessment, they can really be the occasion to change our vision. And I want to say another thing. This year we had an important report from the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, which says that the environmental impact assessment is a fundamental right of people, of planet and of nature. And if we prevent all the possibility to make damage to nature, we really can bring the energy transition with a powerful effort to reinforce nature and to give a new resilient way of projecting our plans. And I want to say that in our works, I finished, we put as a mitigation the Annex 7 of the Nature Restoration Law. So we are trying to give models according to the European law, which cares for nature and energy and climate change.
Thank you very much, Paola. Your experience was very precious to hear. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Alessandro Marangoni to say something to us about the research that he has been doing as Altesis. He's the CEO of Altesis. Of course, I shouldn't be asking that, because the research will be presented on the 5th of December. But I will ask to Alessandro to tell us something about how to deploy renewables on the land. This is the research is about that. And then I will ask to Viviane Radatz, how do they solve this kind of problems in Germany? So the other speaker will know. Alessandro didn't, so they are going to speak. Please, 5 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Maria Grazia, for this introduction and the invitation. Given we have only 5 minutes, I try to be very pragmatic. Of course, the study you mentioned, we carry out with your cooperation and the cooperation with the European Climate Foundation give us not only theory, but also many practical suggestions. So the issue is understanding how combining climate action and nature. Of course, there are two essential aspects of integrating renewable energy into our landscape. On one hand, the territorial planning impacts on the performance of installations, it's obvious. On the other hand, we need to balance environmental and landscape impacts with social acceptability. So there are basically 4 key points in my opinion. One, the renewable distribution across the countries. 2, the project and authorization process. Third, renewable permitting and environmental landscapes laws that are not aligned. And fourth, the lack of a policy for territorial distribution of RES. Of course, we have no time to go in deep for each of these points, but starting from these key points, we also did some proposal. First, it's obvious that renewable distribution is at the same time a technical and a social political issue in Italy especially, but everywhere. You mentioned the topic of Aridon in your introduction this morning. It's really a big issue. The reality is that now in Italy, roughly 70% of the projected power is located in 3 regions, Sicily, Puglia, and Sardinia, including Sardinia that we all know that only 1% of the land is available for renewables. It's mad, really. At the same time, we know that there has been a huge growth in the authorization request in our country, and the public bodies are not able to cope with. Of course, for instance, the Commission for Environmental Impacts did really a great effort and accelerated a lot its performance compared to the past, but the number of projects is really important. I don't want to bother you with all the issues concerning the permitting process in Italy. Notwithstanding the progress in the last year, the simplification laws, we are not as fast as Europe asks us and as the other country, some other country did. And there is a lack of policy for territorial distribution of RES. So what we can do? Very practically, we can suggest some point. First, repurposing lands. I mean, using abandoned industrial, former quarry, marginal areas, so to have a limited impact. To promote real agrivoltaics, combining energy and agriculture. To push on distributed generation, since a small size has a small impacts. Revamping and repowering, also Dean previously mentioned, to make more efficient what we already have. And I think that infrastructure and network optimization are very important to make renewable viable, and also for load-based base load production. Last but not least, community involvement. I finish my 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. You put your clock. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And thank you for being with us. Although you have a cold, we can guess.
Thanks.
Vivienne, what are you doing in Germany? In 5 minutes is very yes. I will give you. In 5 minutes is a little bit, but you can come in here because I came in here only because I saw the people there could see somebody. Because we are.
Hello. Well, then I don't need this. Thank you for the invitation to talk a little bit about the German experience here with renewables and nature. First of all, I have to say in Germany, we have raised the share of renewables to 62% right now. Okay. From about a little less than 10% in the early 2000s. So over the course of 24 years, it's been really significant. When we started from renewables just being hydro and a little bit of biomass. And so all the additions have been mostly solar PV and wind onshore and offshore. We have very ambitious targets for 2030. So 80% should be the share of renewables in Germany in 2030. And we are assuming that is on 800 terawatt hours of demand in 2030. So 80% of that should be renewable by then. There was a huge uptake of renewables in the early 2000s, and then it went really down because it was basically limited politically. But since we've had a new government 3 years ago, they have actually set in motion a lot of renewable, I would say, unblocking laws. So we have actually seen a lot of new permitting, and it's going, like the curve is really going up. And what have we done? We have seen that especially the permitting process was much too long, much too complicated, too little capacities. And on top of that, we've had issues with, in some parts of the country, with nature conservation sites, and also with lawsuits. Lawsuits not only on grounds of nature conservation, but also because local communities weren't included in the development, especially of large wind farms. And we've had very different kind of structures. There's a lot of citizen-owned wind farms in Germany, but they are more in the more affluent areas, and in the not so well-to-do areas, you would have large corporations setting up large wind farms, and the local communities would not actually benefit from them, and also the money wouldn't stay in the communities. So we needed to deal with these because that was also stalling the development, but also there needed to be a proactive approach to the conservation side, because we know renewables are actually the best energy form that we can have for nature. A fossil fuel, and you said this in your introduction, Maria Grazia, fossil fuel is much more damaging to nature. Renewables are 2 to 16 times better for nature and people than fossil fuels are. Just a little example, if we actually electrify transport, we would have 50% less transport on the world seas, because 50% of what we're transporting is just oil to burn in cars. So if we get rid of that, that would also already be like a huge impact for nature. So renewables really the way to go, but nonetheless, there are impacts on local nature. So we developed a wind acceleration law together with the idea of setting up standardized species mapping, and also standardized area finding, so that once you have basically mapped an area, you can then build renewables or wind, especially, which is the most, in most cases, has the conflicts with nature conservation, much more rapidly. All the federal states in Germany are required to map their areas and to contribute 2% of the whole federal state area to wind energy. And so they also proactively map these areas, and they proactively do an environmental assessment for the whole area. And then it is really much easier to go in and to give permits to developers when they go in to build the wind farms. And so you get a lot more speed in the permitting process, and it still means you get your sufficient nature conservation results, because you have mapped preemptively, and so you can tell like where you can actually put the renewables. So that has been actually speeding up the renewable deployment in Germany a lot. We still have a lot of things to ask from the German government, because especially on offshore wind, we have seen that they have taken it a step too far. So we only have strategic environmental impact assessments and not the actual project-based impact assessments, which even the wind developers in the offshore area think are super necessary, because they need them for their own ways of how to implement the project. So we've been in an alliance with all the wind developers to actually ask for mandatory environmental impact assessments in the offshore area. And what we also ask for is a what we call green infrastructure. So large connected areas that we also build for nature, as to kind of offset some of the impacts that we have, and also to monitor a lot better the overall species and habitats that we have. I'm being cut off. So that you can actually have an overview of what kind of species impact you've had in Germany as a whole, compared to specific sites, which is very important to kind of get an information on the conservation impacts as a whole. So I will stop there. I could say much more, but there's no time.
Thank you very much, Viviana. Oh, thank you. It was very, very interesting. So interesting that I promise that I will organize a webinar with all of you, because we must go much deeper about that. Now we have Daniele Agostini, then I will ask to Matteo Leonardi, that is a friend, to make a sort of summing up, but I will also ask a question to him. So he is a real friend, you know, that we used to work together once. So Daniele Agostini is in a better position to speak, because he's already part of the Clean Action Alliance, the Clean Action Coalition. But at the same time, I would like to know from Daniele how the ENL sees this alliance between the nature, local community, how the renewables can be bring co-benefits both for local communities and for nature. 5 minutes, sorry, but we will be kicked off out.
No problem. First of all, thank you, Maria Grazia, and thank you for organizing a very interesting event. I guess we will have to have more time some other time. So I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I was in Baku until last night for a long week, and it was very interesting, but I had to leave yesterday. Definitely the synergies between biodiversity and climate are very important. We need to make sure that the two work together rather than they stall each other. At the moment, often the penetration of renewables, and for those of you who know Enel, you know that half of our investments are on renewable energy and the other half on smart grids, more or less, are very important. But we're also very much committed to biodiversity, and we were quite active in COP16 in Cali. So I think it's really important, this reality of reconciling nature and climate, as Dean was saying. It was great to meet you, Dean, earlier. Especially it's challenging because often on climate we work more at a higher level, national, regional, and then it's just deployment, whereas biodiversity often is tackled more at a local level. I think in that respect, the way forward is really tackling these different levels. So at the highest level, it's about, like Brambilla was saying earlier, is really tackling the strategic assessments at the national level, with the more planning that we have in the climate, energy, and the NDCs, and the permitting. So we need to make sure that these three levels talk to each other and help each other. I think it was also mentioned with experience in Germany, this connection between strategic environmental assessment, national plans, and local permits. So it's very important to make sure that these three are in connection, and the higher level actually help prepare the local permitting in order to accelerate it. The other part is aligning methodological frameworks to actually put the projects in and make sure that projects incorporate both biodiversity and climate. In that sense, there's still a lot of work I think we need to do on KPIs, especially on the biodiversity side. We see still a need for standardization. And again, the experience that was being mentioned in Germany at the mapping, I think it's a very interesting one. And the more we disseminate these best practices, the better it is. There's also the question of trade-offs. It's often very difficult to work on trade-offs between citing renewables and biodiversity impacts. And in that sense, some of the work on credits that is being planned by the European Commission is a very interesting one. Of course, we need to make sure that these nature credits are of the highest environmental integrity in order to make sure that we do pursue the goals that we are looking to. The last part, and I think often not enough work is dedicated to spreading best practices, is how to organize the engagement at the local level with local communities. We've been for years exploring the creating shared value approach, where we really engage with local communities, looking at the materiality of the issues that they're facing, and that the project is rising within the communities, and we've had some very positive results. Of course, biodiversity comes up in these processes in good and in bad sometimes, we need to admit it. And so it is very, very important that we do develop effective frameworks at the local level where the social, economic, and environmental impacts can be reconciled. The more effective these frameworks are, and the more we can disseminate the successful ones, the better it's going to be. So again, it's a challenge. I think it's a very important one, and but we need to make sure that the COP on biodiversity and the COP on climate work together rather than working against each other. So I'll leave it to that, Maria Grazia, and thank you very much for organizing this event.
Thank you very much, Daniele. You were very, very on time in the time, so I'm admired, because I never can do that. So Matteo, I would like to ask you to give your overview of the debate. But before that, my question, I don't know if you looked at the WhatsApp I sent to you, because you never do. In fact, I want to ask you, what is the benefits? What are the benefits for the normal citizens in the energy bill that they are already getting from renewables? It's something that nobody knows, and now we have the atomic lawyer saying that we are paying a lot to be on the bills. It is true? Is it true?
Thank you, Maria Grazia, and all of you who contributed to the organization of this event. I think, yes, one of the two issues that had not been touched much during this event, from my point of view, which I would like to complement, is the cultural issue. We have not discussed that how the infrastructure are welcomed by a community is the product of a national culture, a general culture. And the culture is the certification of interests. And there are a lot of interests that are not in favor of development of renewables because of economic and vested interests. And this has to be taken into consideration in the society where national culture is very much affected by the ownership of the media, and the capacity to influence the public debate. This is an issue that needs to be taken into consideration in order to come up with the right tools that needs necessary a political will to be implemented. So what we have seen here is that the principles that have emerged during the conversation, which is the capacity of states to come up with the land planning, a proper land planning, or the issue of repurposing the land, is something that needs a strong political will. And if this political will is not on the ground, on the table, the responsibility of the building of this infrastructure, which is the only infrastructure that can sort out the climate change issue, cannot be reflected and cannot be just sorted out by on a dialogue with the local people, where the impact is evident. But also there is a larger responsibility that has to be taken into consideration, and this responsibility has to be reflected at the higher level of the states. And this needs a political will, and this political will is not on the ground yet in many member states, in many states. Now I go to quickly to the issue of the economics. Renewables are by far the cheapest way to produce electricity, and in Europe, at least in Italy, the price of generation of renewables is now a third of the price of generation with natural gas. But this cost is not reflected in final tariffs. This is not reflected for many reasons. There are regulatory reasons, there are legislative reasons, there are fiscal reasons, but there are also market design reasons which do not allow the price to be reflected in final tariffs. I think this has to be the priority, not the local benefit in terms of price, but the national benefit in terms of price, because here we are not talking about developing a single photovoltaics plant. Here we are talking about an infrastructure that will be the competitiveness of our countries in the future. And the plant that I build today will be reflected in the next 10, 15 years prices of the electricity system. So it is very important that the authorization process does not put an incredible burden and does not increase the costs. To have the price reflected to the final consumers, the first thing is to have competition on the production side. So as long as renewables authorization are few, the price that will be formed of those few renewables will be the same price of the alternative, which is today natural gas. If we had a lot of renewables coming into pipeline, the price will be reflected, and all the legislative and the regulatory structure will be forced to reflect this price into final consumers. Another thing that I think should be noted is the contribution of fiscality. The fiscal structure are not aligned to renewable objectives. There might be a system of incentive on fiscal components, which are very heavy on the final price for consumers, that can be changed with the renewable supplies as compared to a fossil fuel supply. And the last point is to give value of distribution generation, not again because of giving too much importance to the local issues, which is important, but not in the frame of my point. It is important to give more value to distributed infrastructure, because distributed infrastructure again is a way to develop an infrastructure which is more competitive in terms of price, because it reduces overall transmission infrastructure costs. So distributed generation, distributed storage is a way to reduce overall price of the infrastructure. And this is, I think, what has to be the priority now, is to be clear that renewables today are the cheapest way to generate electricity, and this is aligned to climate goals, and this is the efforts we have put in the last 10 years of policies, and this now has to be reflected to final consumers, and this is not at all yet done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matteo. It was very, very, very dense in 5 minutes. I'm very admired. I must say, and you know that I don't say it so often. So I would like to say that it was just a beginning. And I really would like to organize something. I would like to organize a focus on Germany, for instance. Maybe Vivienne can help with other speakers, and because since they don't, I mean, the institutions don't help in talking each other and finding the best way. That is just the way we built this. You know that I always invite somebody from the business side, from the civil society, from the governments, and so on. I think that the idea could be shared and built in this way. So I promise that I will organize one on that, and maybe with Dean we can also organize something more on clean action. Of course, the message is please join Clean Action, but we will do. And of course, the last intervention of Matteo, not to mention the intervention by Marangoni and Agostini, and the big experience of Paola Bermilla, they are all something that we need to go deeper on. So we, after Germany, maybe we can go deeper on Italy and build on what Matteo and others can, the ideas that Matteo and others can give. Okay, so it's the beginning. See you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay. Bye.